Good evening. I hope you had a fantastic day. Today the market was very choppy and was up and down for most of the day. Markets surged in the final hour of trading though, and the Dow ended up 0.68%, while the S&P 500 had a slightly better performance with a gain of 0.78%. The Nasdaq gained the most though, as the tech-heavy index gained 1.44%. Last night, FBI Director Christopher Wray claimed the Chinese government has committed acts of espionage and cyber attacks against the United States. He said, quote, "To achieve its goals and surpass America, China recognizes it needs to make leaps in cutting-edge technology. But the sad fact is that instead of engaging in the hard slog of innovation, China often steals American intellectual property and then uses it to compete against the very American companies it victimizes, in effect, cheating twice. Confronting this threat effectively does not mean we shouldn't do business with the Chinese. It does not mean we shouldn't host Chinese visitors. It does not mean we shouldn't welcome Chinese students or coexist with China on the world stage. It does mean that when China violates our criminal laws and international norms, we're not going to tolerate, much less enable." End quote. He was later asked if he had an estimate for the amount of financial damage that has been done to the United States by China. He replied saying, quote, "Every figure I've seen is breathtaking." End quote. Lastly, regarding some of the intellectual property that has been stolen, Wray answered, quote, "Everything from military equipment to wind turbines." End quote. The attack on China is not stopping there. Today, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said that the Trump administration is seeking a way to block the Chinese government's efforts of stealing Americans' data through telecommunications and social media. He said, quote, "The infrastructure of this next 100 years must be a communications infrastructure that is based on a Western ideal of private property and protection of private citizens' information in a transparent way." End quote. He then added that Chinese hardware and software does not fit this model. Ultimately, the government is trying to make sure the Chinese government can't access private information, such as healthcare records and other sensitive information that we all have on our technology devices. Earlier in the week, Pompeo said the U.S. government is looking at banning the popular social media app TikTok. When asked if people should download TikTok, Pompeo replied, quote, "Only if you want your private information in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party." End quote. Dividend payments fell a record $42.5 billion compared to last year's numbers. Quote, "There were massive dividend suspensions in the second quarter of 2020, as companies had no time to ride out the virus, as sales were cut off, and positive cash flow turned to burn rate analysis." End quote, according to Howard Silverblatt, senior index analyst at S&P Dow Jones Indices. Dividend increases in the quarter totaled just $6.7 billion, which was a drop of 45.7% from a year ago. Meanwhile, decreases came to $49.2 billion, which was an increase of 1,156%. Silverblatt added, quote, "The cuts appear to have subsided, as those most impacted have taken their actions and those currently able to ride through the initial downturn are continuing to pay. If the overall reopening improves and regions act to limit any upturns, we would expect to see fewer and smaller dividend increases in the second half, and a significant decrease in cuts and suspensions, which could limit the overall 2020 damage to a low single-digit decline." End quote. In other words, the worst seems to be over, but cuts and suspensions are still to be expected. Apple Maps is showing worrisome signs in terms of the economic rebound. Their data shows that driving activity is slowing down. States that have been experiencing outbreaks, such as California, Texas, and Arizona, have all seen their driving requests taking the biggest hit. Regardless, Apple Maps data is just one indicator, but it still may provide us with insights that we can use to project our thoughts on the economic comeback of the United States. as this data is updated frequently, while other economic indicators usually take a month or so to compile the sufficient data. Today, New Jersey took another step in its fight against the coronavirus. The state has now ordered people to wear a face mask outdoors when social distancing is not an option. Exceptions to the rule apply to individuals who are eating and drinking at an outdoor dining establishment, those who cannot wear a face covering for medical reasons, and children under the age of 2. The governor said, quote, "Requiring masks outdoors is a step, frankly, that I hope we would not have to take. But unfortunately, we have been seeing a backslide in compliance," end quote. CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield responded to Trump's comments of opening schools up again. Dr. Redfield said, quote, "We really don't have evidence that children are driving the transmission cycle of this virus," end quote. This is a big deal, as Trump has been pushing for schools to reopen as he believes that children don't play a role in spreading the virus. This way of thinking is misleading, as children under the age of 10 are the most undertested age group. White House Health Advisor Dr. Deborah Birx said that this is due to kids not showing symptoms and therefore they are not getting tested. This is not the result of the kids not carrying the virus. The result of schools being forced to reopen is a big task, as the children have the potential to spread the disease to others, such as their parents and fellow classmates. Also, schools would be forced to hire more staff and invest in refitting school buildings, which could weigh especially heavily on districts with less funding. Only 2 sectors were in the green, with basic materials having the worst day by far, as the sector fell around 1.5%. Tech easily had the best day, getting close to 2%. Consumer services and utilities were strong as well, with each gaining close to 1%. Per usual, growth stocks performed the best. However, mid and small cap each gained more than 1.4% and beat out large cap growth, which gained 1.13%. The other baskets of stocks gained, and small cap value performed well, as they gained 0.91%. The largest gainer in the S&P 500 today was Kohls, which is a popular clothing and household goods retailer. Shares gained 9.61% during trading today, after Bank of America gave Kohls a buy rating and a price target of $27. They previously had it rated as a neutral, with a price target of $20. The other big day came from social media app Twitter, as shares gained 7.31%. The move upwards comes on rumors of Twitter implementing a subscription service. However, it is not yet clear what the service would look like. Rosenblatt doesn't see a subscription service for general users as likely, but as of now, anyone has a good guess as to what it will look like. The Mosaic Company, which is a mining company that focuses on phosphate and potash, had the worst day. Shares were down nearly 6% as they received a downgrade from Bank of America. CF Industries, which is a company that manufactures and distributes agricultural fertilizers, had shares fall 5.07%, as they were also downgraded by Bank of America. Both are now rated as underperform, while they were previously rated as a buy. The analyst said that he expects the sector will, quote, "struggle in the second half of 2020 and potentially into 2021, end quote. He added that, quote, "optimism has diminished greatly, as record corn acres, lower fuel ethanol consumption, and record soybean production in Brazil could lead to the lowest cash prices for corn and soybeans in 14 years. Getting into earnings, we start off with Bed Bath & Beyond, ticker symbol BBBY, which is a popular chain of stores that sells a variety of bedding, bathroom, and kitchen products. Earnings were dismal, as expected due to this past quarter being the most affected by COVID-19. Bed Bath & Beyond missed on non-GAAP EPS by 64 cents, as the company recorded a loss of $1.96 per share for the quarter. Revenue came in at $1.31 billion, and missed estimates by a slight $80 million. Notably, revenue fell 49% year over year, even after their online sales grew by 100%. The company also announced that they are planning to close approximately 200 stores over the next 2 years, as they plan to get back to profitability. Shares are currently down more than 9% after the earnings report. Lastly, we have MSC Industrial Direct, ticker symbol MSM, which is one of the world's largest industrial equipment distributors. This morning, MSC reported a double beat on earnings. GAAP EPS was $1.40 for the second quarter and beat estimates by 22 cents. Revenue was down 3.6% on a yearly basis, but came in at $835 million for the quarter, which beat estimates by $60.15 million. The company decided to refrain from providing quarterly guidance due to uncertainty, and ultimately, shares fell 7.5%. That is all that I have for tonight. As always, I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.